Good evening and welcome back to my channel. While the entire world is watching missiles fall on Dubai, jets go down over Kuwait, and Hezbollah drag Lebanon into this war from the north, two of the most powerful men on earth are sitting in Moscow and Beijing making calculations that will determine whether this Iran war stays a regional conflict or becomes the opening chapter of the most dangerous global confrontation since the Cold War. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are watching every single development of this war in real time. They are watching how America fights. They are watching how long it takes. They are watching how much it costs. And they are deciding right now what they are going to do about it. Tonight, we are going to go deep into what Russia and China are actually doing behind the scenes, why their public statements and their private actions are completely different things, and what that gap means for every country on this planet, including yours. Let us start from the beginning, because to understand where Russia and China stand today on March 2nd, 2026, you have to understand what both countries were doing in the weeks and months before Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th. This is the part of the story that almost nobody is covering properly. In January 2026, Russia and Iran signed a long-awaited strategic cooperation agreement reinforcing the military and economic alliance between the two countries. This was not a symbolic document. Russia had been supplying Iran with anti-aircraft missile systems. Russia's state nuclear agency was operating at Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant with over 200 Russian workers on site. Russia and Iran had held joint naval drills alongside China in the Strait of Hormuz just weeks before the war started. These three countries, Russia, China, and Iran, conducted joint military exercises in January 2026 called the Will for Peace exercises, sending a clear signal to Washington that they were coordinating. China's involvement went even deeper. Intelligence reports from February 27th, just 24 hours before the bombs started falling, indicated that China had already sent loitering munitions, which are kamikaze drone systems, and air defense components to Iran before the attack, while the United States and Iran were still technically engaged in nuclear negotiations, while Iran's foreign minister was publicly telling the world that talks in Geneva had achieved serious progress and that peace was within reach. China was shipping weapons to Tehran. Reports also swirled for months before the war about negotiations between Beijing and Tehran over China's CM-302 supersonic anti-ship missile, described by military analysts as a carrier-killing weapon so advanced and so fast that American naval defenses would struggle to intercept it. The delivery of those missiles to Iran would have given the IRGC the capability to threaten the U.S. Navy carriers operating in the Persian Gulf directly. According to analysts at the American Enterprise Institute, it was China's weapons transfers to Iran that may have actually fast-forwarded the timeline of this war. Because once Washington and Tel Aviv learned that China was shipping carrier-killing missiles to Tehran, the window for a diplomatic resolution effectively closed. Trump and Netanyahu could not afford to let Iran become equipped with a weapon that could sink an American aircraft carrier, so they acted. Now, here is where the story gets complicated in ways that should concern every person watching this conflict. After the bombs fell and Khamenei was killed and Iran launched its retaliatory strikes across the Gulf, both Russia and China made loud public statements condemning the United States and Israel. Putin called the killing of Khamenei a cynical violation of all norms of human morality and international law. He sent personal condolences to Iran's president. Russia's foreign ministry called the operation armed aggression and demanded an immediate halt to military action. China's foreign ministry said the killing of Iran's supreme leader was a grave violation of Iran's sovereignty and security. China's foreign minister Wang Yi called on the international community to oppose what he described as the world's regression to the law of the jungle. China and Russia jointly supported an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. On March 2nd, at China's official foreign ministry press conference, a spokesperson firmly condemned the U.S. and Israel and called for an immediate stop to military operations. These are powerful words, strong language, the kind of statements that sound like the beginning of a coalition forming against American power. But here is the critical question that determines whether this war stays limited or goes global. Are Russia and China actually going to do anything beyond words? And the answer, according to analysts at CNBC, Chatham House, and BCA Research, is deeply revealing. Both Russia and China have condemned the U.S., but stopped short of pledging any meaningful military support to Tehran. Bloomberg reported on March 2nd that China is showing few signs it will directly supply arms to Iran. when a journalist at China's official press conference directly asked whether Beijing and Moscow were considering providing military support to Iran if it requested such support, China's spokesperson refused to answer. The question was ignored. That silence is one of the most important data points of this entire war. Why is China not sending its most advanced weapons to save its ally Iran? The answer reveals everything about how Beijing actually thinks. China purchases more than 80% of Iran's shipped oil. Iran has been a critical and discounted energy source for Beijing, one that Western sanctions made available to China at below-market prices. A weaker Iran needs China more. A destroyed Iran becomes almost completely dependent on Beijing for economic survival, technological support, and diplomatic protection. Analysts at the Chatham House think tank in London put it this way: the weaker the Iranian regime gets, whether from military strikes or domestic unrest, the more diplomatically, economically, and technologically dependent on China it becomes. A damaged but surviving Iran is actually more strategically valuable to Beijing than a strong independent one, because China gets more leverage at a lower price. So China condemns the war loudly in public and quietly watches Iran get beaten down into a position of permanent dependence in private. There is a second and even more consequential reason why China is holding back from direct military intervention: Taiwan. Xi Jinping has spent years building toward what many analysts believe will be a military move on Taiwan, potentially around 2027. Every military resource China uses in Iran is a resource it cannot use in the Taiwan Strait. Every confrontation China picks with the United States in the Persian Gulf is a confrontation that could trigger American military responses that would complicate China's Taiwan plans for years. Trump and Xi spoke by phone on February 4th, just weeks before this war started, and Iran was one of the topics discussed. According to the Chatham House analyst Ahmed Abudu, Beijing may seek concessions on issues more directly related to its own interests, specifically Taiwan and trade, in exchange for its significantly watered-down response on Iran. Read that again slowly. China is not helping Iran because it is calculating that its silence on Iran is worth more than weapons. China is using America's entanglement in the Middle East as leverage to extract concessions on Taiwan and trade. That is cold, calculated, strategic patience at a level most Western audiences do not fully appreciate. Russia's calculation is different, but equally revealing. Putin cannot meaningfully intervene militarily in the Persian Gulf. The reality is stark. Years of grinding war in Ukraine have hollowed out Russia's capacity to project power beyond its borders. Matt Gherkin, the chief geopolitical strategist at BCA Research, told CNBC directly that Moscow's military is overstretched and its economy is under sustained pressure from Western sanctions. Russia does not have spare military capacity to send to Iran. What Russia does have is something far more useful in this moment: oil. When Operation Epic Fury began and the Strait of Hormuz started to close and tankers stopped moving, oil prices surged 8 to 9%. Brent crude jumped to nearly $80 a barrel. Russia sells oil to China and India to fund its war machine in Ukraine. Every single dollar that oil prices rise because of the Iran conflict goes directly into the Russian state budget. Putin is sitting in Moscow watching his revenues increase without firing a single shot or sending a single soldier. One analyst on CNBC said what everyone in the energy industry is already thinking: Putin is thrilled. Anything that raises the price of oil is good for him. This is the strategic trap that America has walked into and that neither Trump nor his advisors appear to have publicly grappled with. By launching a 5-week war in the Middle East, the United States is simultaneously enriching Russia through higher oil prices, giving China strategic breathing room to advance its Taiwan agenda, draining American military resources and attention, and demonstrating to every government in the anti-American world that being close to the United States offers no real protection if Washington decides military action is more expedient than diplomacy. That last point is the one that is reverberating through Moscow and Beijing right now in a way that has long-term consequences beyond this specific war. On February 27th, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi publicly said that the latest round of Geneva talks had achieved serious progress. Oman's foreign minister said peace was within reach. And then, less than 24 hours later, American and Israeli jets were in the skies over Tehran, killing the supreme leader. If you are Putin watching this from Moscow, what does it tell you about any security guarantee or peace agreement the United States might offer you over Ukraine? If you are Xi watching from Beijing, what does it tell you about any diplomatic assurance Washington might give you about Taiwan or trade? The lesson that every authoritarian government on earth is drawing from the Iran war is identical. American commitments are provisional. American diplomacy can be terminated overnight. No amount of progress at a negotiating table protects you from an American decision to go to war. Norwegian analyst Paul Steigen captured this precisely in an article published on March 2nd, when he wrote that Khamenei's killing should pour cold water on any illusions Putin and Xi had about negotiating with the Americans. The point he was making is not that Russia or China will immediately retaliate. The point is that this war is permanently changing how both countries think about the United States and about what level of military deterrence they need to feel genuinely secure. Russia will accelerate its military rebuilding after Ukraine. China will accelerate its preparations around Taiwan. North Korea, which condemned the strikes on Iran as illegal aggression, will redouble its nuclear and missile development. The Iran war is not just killing people in Tehran and Dubai. It is reshaping the military calculations of every major power that does not want to end up in Iran's position. And what makes this moment so uniquely dangerous is that all of these calculations are happening simultaneously with the war still actively ongoing. The IRGC is still firing. Hezbollah is now in the war from Lebanon. Iraqi Shia militias launched 23 drone attacks on U.S. bases inside Iraq on Monday morning alone. A U.S.-flagged oil tanker was hit by Iranian fire in Bahrain. A bomb drone killed a mariner in the Gulf of Oman. 3 American jets went down over Kuwait in a friendly fire incident. A 4th U.S. soldier is dead. The war is still expanding on day 3, and in the background, the 2 most powerful countries in the world that are not direct participants are making strategic decisions that will echo for decades. Here is the scenario that keeps defense analysts awake at night. It is not Russia and China sending troops to fight alongside Iran. That is not how this works. The scenario that keeps people worried is a more gradual and more insidious one. Russia continues to profit from high oil prices and uses that money to sustain and eventually win in Ukraine before American public support for aid runs out. China uses the distraction of America's 5-week Iran war to accelerate its military buildup around Taiwan, testing American responses in the South China Sea while Washington is focused on the Persian Gulf. North Korea deepens its military cooperation with both Russia and Iran, sharing weapons technology and providing artillery shells that keep Russia's war machine running. And all 3 of them continue to watch and learn from every tactical and strategic decision the United States makes in Iran, storing that intelligence for future use in their own potential conflicts with American power. This is not speculation. The foundation for every single one of these scenarios already exists. Russia and Iran signed their strategic cooperation agreement. China and Iran were in advanced weapons negotiations. Russia, China, and Iran conducted joint naval exercises. North Korea has been supplying Russia with weapons for Ukraine. The axis is real. It is functioning. And the Iran war has not broken it. If anything, it has given every member of that axis a new and extremely powerful lesson in why they need to keep building it faster and stronger than before. The United States went into this war with the world's most powerful military and a clear tactical plan: destroy Iran's nuclear program, degrade the IRGC, and create conditions for regime change. That military plan is being executed. Over 1,000 Iranian targets have been struck. Iran's navy is largely destroyed. Its central military command no longer exists. But the strategic consequences of the decision to launch this war, the consequences for global power dynamics, for oil markets, for the Russia-China axis, for Taiwan, for Ukraine, for the long-term balance of power between America and the rest of the world, those consequences are only beginning to come into focus. And they are going to play out over years, not weeks. Putin is watching. Xi is watching, and neither of them is going to react in a way that gives America the simple confrontation it knows how to handle. They are going to react in ways that are slower, subtler, more patient, and ultimately more dangerous than anything happening right now in the skies over Tehran or the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the real war behind the war, and you are watching it unfold in real time. Stay with us because we will be here every single day covering every dimension of this conflict as it develops. Now I want to hear from you. A, Do you believe China and Russia are secretly benefiting from America being bogged down in Iran because it gives them freedom to act on Taiwan and Ukraine without interference? B. If China was secretly shipping weapons to Iran while peace talks were still ongoing, should the United States treat China as a co-responsible party in this war and respond directly? C. Is Putin's strategy of profiting from higher oil prices while staying out of direct conflict the smartest geopolitical move any leader has made in this entire crisis? Drop your answers in the comments right now and hit subscribe, because we are covering every major development the moment it breaks.